I never thought words could break bones, but hers did. It was her birthday, Lily's 21st. I had arranged the entire celebration at her favorite restaurant, invited her friends, even paid for her trip abroad as a graduation gift. I thought I was doing what a good father does: provide, support, protect. But halfway through dinner, she looked me dead in the eyes and said, "The best gift would be if you just died." The whole table went silent. Forks froze midair. My heart stopped. I laughed, awkwardly at first, thinking it was one of her sarcastic jabs. But she didn't laugh. She just stared, her lips trembling, her eyes wet with rage and years of unspoken something. That night, as everyone else left the table in uncomfortable silence, I sat there alone, surrounded by untouched cake and the wreckage of 2 decades of fatherhood. I didn't know it then, but those words would change everything for both of us. After the dinner, she blocked my number. I came home to a house that had never felt so large. Every photo frame seemed to mock me. Her first day at school, her graduation, her mother smiling beside us before she left. I poured myself a drink, then another. Maybe I deserved it, I thought. Maybe I'd failed in ways I couldn't see. But then I saw the file on my desk, the paperwork for her startup funding. $150,000 I was about to wire from the trust I'd built over 25 years. Money meant to give her the wings I never had. I stared at it for hours. My mind kept echoing her words like a curse. If you just died. And for the first time, I felt something dark crawl into me. Not hatred, but exhaustion. The kind that makes you stop fighting. So, at 2:17 a.m., I sent an email. Effective immediately, I'm canceling the funding transfer. I'll review alternatives when communication resumes. And I signed it, Dad. Then I turned off the lights and let the darkness swallow the house. I wasn't always this kind of father, the kind who gives money instead of time. My father was a steelworker. He never gave me much, but he gave me himself. I remember the smell of iron on his hands, the sound of his boots on the stairs. He'd come home exhausted, but still sit beside me and help me with homework, even if his eyes could barely stay open. When I became a father, I promised I'd give my child everything I never had: education, comfort, opportunities. But I'd given her things, not presents, checks, not conversations, trips, not time. Maybe Lily didn't hate me. Maybe she hated the ghost of the man I became, one who traded love for success. That night, I realized I'd become the opposite of my father. And maybe that's why my daughter wanted me gone. I wrote her a letter the next morning. It said, "Lily, I don't know what I did to make you hate me this much, but I'm listening now. I'm ready to hear you, if you ever want to talk." I sealed it in an envelope, drove to her apartment, and sat in my car for an hour. I could see her window, music playing inside, laughter, life. She was fine without me. I didn't go in. I left the letter in the mailbox and drove away. That evening, I got an email from her lawyer. A single sentence: all future communications should go through legal channels. No explanation, no signature, just walls where love used to live. So I never sent another letter. Small towns have big mouths. Within a week, people started whispering, "Did you hear about Robert and his daughter? She said something terrible, poor man. No wonder he stopped her funding. Serves her right." But gossip never tells the truth, only the convenient version. What no one knew was that the funding wasn't just a business deal, it was Lily's dream. She wanted to start a nonprofit art studio for underprivileged kids to help them express emotions through painting, something she said Dad never understood. That line cut deep when I remembered it. Maybe the funding wasn't for her. Maybe it was her way to heal others from what she couldn't heal in herself. But I was too hurt to see that. And sometimes, the wounded man becomes the villain in someone else's healing story. A week later, I went up to the attic to look for something to distract myself. Old photo albums, maybe. Instead, I found a dusty box labeled Mom's Things, Lily's Drawings. Inside were dozens of sketches Lily had made as a child, crayon portraits of me fixing her bike, watercolors of her mother before the illness took her. One drawing stopped me cold. It was of me, sitting behind my desk, staring at a computer while she stood at the door holding a paintbrush. In the corner, in her small 8-year-old handwriting, she'd written, "Daddy works too much." I sat there, surrounded by old memories and the echo of my own mistakes, and cried for the first time in years. It wasn't the kind of cry that releases pain. It was the kind that admits guilt. 2 months passed without a word. Then, one morning, I got an email. The sender's name stopped my heart. Lily. I opened it. Dad, I didn't mean what I said that night. But you hurt me in ways you'll never understand. You always tried to fix problems with money, like that could replace love. You were there at every recital physically, but never emotionally. Mom used to tell me you loved me more than your work. I stopped believing her after she died. I wanted to make something that mattered, and I needed you to see me, not fund me. I'm sorry if I went too far. Lily, I reread it a dozen times. Each word was a mirror, showing me everything I'd avoided facing. But pride is a powerful poison. I replied with 2 sentences. Thank you for writing. I hope you find what you're looking for. And just like that, I killed another chance at healing. A few days later, a storm rolled through the town. The wind howled like a ghost outside my empty house. I watched lightning flash across the lake where Lily learned to swim years ago, clinging to my arm. Memories came like thunder. The day her mother died, the day I promised I'd be enough. I wasn't. I'd buried myself in work because grief was easier to manage on a spreadsheet. I walked into Lily's old room, untouched since she moved out. The walls were covered in paintings, her teenage self, vibrant colors, emotions exploding on canvas. I realized that she'd been screaming through her art for years, and I never once asked what the colors meant. That night, I whispered into the dark, "I'm sorry, kiddo." But apologies said to empty rooms have no witnesses. 3 months later, my phone rang. It was her friend, Sophie. She sounded panicked. "Mr. Grant, Lily's in the hospital." I dropped everything and drove like a madman. Turns out she'd been working herself to exhaustion, trying to open her art center without my funding. She'd taken odd jobs, borrowed money, and slept in the studio she was renovating. Her body had given out before her will did. When I got to her room, she was asleep, pale, fragile, yet still somehow fierce. Sophie whispered, "She didn't want me to call you, but I couldn't watch her like this." I sat there for hours, watching her breathe. Every beep of the monitor was a second chance ticking away. When she finally opened her eyes, her first words were, "Why are you here?" I swallowed hard, because I should have been here all along. The first few hours were tense. She barely looked at me. I told her I wasn't there to talk about money or projects. I just wanted to be near her. After a long silence, she said softly, "I was angry, Dad. You always showed up with solutions, not feelings. I didn't want your money. I wanted you to see me." Her words were a knife and a balm at once. I nodded. "I see you now. I really do." She looked away, tears pooling. "It's too late." I took her hand, small, cold, trembling. It's never too late to start again. For the first time in years, she didn't pull away. The machines beeped steadily, like a quiet heartbeat between us. And in that sterile room, surrounded by silence and regret, I realized sometimes the greatest funding a parent can give isn't money, it's presence. She was discharged 2 weeks later. We didn't talk much. Conversations were shallow. Weather, medication, doctors, food. Nothing about the past, nothing about the future. But even silence can heal if it's shared long enough. I started visiting her studio after work. It was a dusty, half-renovated space, walls half-painted, buckets of plaster lying around, canvases stacked in corners. It smelled like paint, hope, and desperation. Every visit, she'd be there, fragile but determined, painting through her pain. One day I asked, "Why not just rest a while longer?" She said, "If I stop now, I'll never start again." I realized then that her will was stronger than any check I could have written. So I picked up a roller and started painting the walls beside her. We didn't say much, but every brushstroke felt like an apology that didn't need words. One Saturday, I came in early and found her painting a mural on the main wall, a series of small handprints forming the shape of a tree. "What's this?" I asked. She smiled faintly. "Every child who comes here will add their handprint. It'll be a growing tree of expression, of healing." I watched as she dipped her palm in bright blue paint and pressed it gently onto the wall. "Want to add yours?" she said. I hesitated. "Mine? I thought this was for kids." She laughed softly. "It's for anyone still learning how to feel." So I pressed my hand next to hers. Blue and green merged, colors touching like a truce. And for the first time in years, I felt like her father again. A few days later, I met with my accountant. I'd been saving for decades, retirement, safety, comfort. But as I stared at the numbers, something shifted. All that money had built walls, not bridges. I told him, "Transfer the original amount back into Lily's foundation account." Quietly, he looked confused. "Didn't you cancel that?" I nodded. "Yes, but this time it's not a gift. It's an investment. In her, in forgiveness. I didn't tell her. I wanted her to think she'd done it all on her own. But she found out anyway. Of course she did. She came to my house, eyes wet but burning. "You funded it again?" I nodded slowly. "You deserve to see your dream happen." She shook her head. "I didn't want your money. I wanted your belief." I smiled. "That's what the money is now." That was the day she hugged me, the first real hug in years. 6 months later, her art center opened. The sign read, "The Bloom Room where pain turns to color." Children from broken homes filled the space. Some painted flowers, others abstract shapes. One kid painted a storm and then smeared a rainbow across it. I stood in the back, watching as Lily guided them gently, her voice calm, her eyes glowing with something pure. A reporter asked her, "What inspired this?" She glanced at me before answering. "A complicated kind of love. One that took a long time to understand." I pretended not to cry as cameras clicked. But inside, I felt something new. Not pride, not relief. Something softer. Peace, maybe. A week after the opening, she handed me an envelope. "Don't read it now," she said. "Read it when you're ready." I placed it on my nightstand and ignored it for days. I was afraid of what it might say, afraid it might reopen wounds we'd just begun to heal. When I finally opened it, the first line read, "Dad, I used to think you loved your work more than me, but now I see that you just didn't know how to love yourself, so you couldn't love anyone properly." She went on. "I said something unforgivable that night. I can never take it back, but I hope you know I never wanted you dead. I just wanted the version of you that couldn't feel to die, so the real you could live." I sat there in silence, tears sliding down my face, because she was right. Something had died that night. The father who thought love was a transaction, and something new was finally being born. Months passed. The Bloom Room thrived. One afternoon, Lily called. "Dad, come by the studio. I want to show you something." When I arrived, she unveiled a massive painting, a stormy sea with a single boat, half sunk, yet glowing from within. "It's called The Father Who Stayed," she said. Then, pointing to a small figure in the boat, she added softly, "That's you." I stared at it, speechless. The painting captured something I couldn't describe. All my guilt, all my love, all my fear, turned into art. People later said it was her masterpiece, but to me, it was something more. It was forgiveness, painted in oil and light. A few months later, I collapsed at the studio during one of her art sessions. It turned out to be a mild heart attack. Lying in the hospital, I felt strangely calm. Lily sat by my side, holding my hand like I used to hold hers when she was sick as a child. She whispered, "Don't you dare leave me now." I smiled weakly. "You once said the best gift would be if I died." She winced. "Don't remind me of that." I squeezed her hand gently. "You were right, though. The part of me that couldn't love needed to die. I'm glad it did." She leaned closer, tears falling. "Then don't die now, okay? I like this version of you." I closed my eyes, smiling through the pain. "I'll try." When I recovered, I wanted to do something for her, something real. So for her next birthday, I didn't buy jewelry or write a check. Instead, I gave her a small box. Inside was a single paintbrush, old, worn, wrapped with a blue ribbon. She looked confused. "What's this?" "It's your mother's," I said. "She used to paint before the illness." I kept it all these years, but didn't know why. Maybe I was waiting to remember what love looked like. Lily clutched it to her chest. This is the best gift I've ever gotten." And for the first time since she was little, she called me Dad. Not Robert, not him, but Dad. That word was worth more than any fortune I'd ever made. A year later, the Bloom Room hosted its first major exhibition, The Colors of Healing. Children, parents, strangers. Everyone came to see what art could do when it was born from pain and turned into hope. Lily asked me to give the opening speech. I stood before the crowd, nervous, and said, "A year ago, I thought I'd lost my daughter. But what I really lost was myself, the man who thought love had to be earned with money. My daughter taught me something. Forgiveness doesn't erase the past, but it changes the direction of the future. So if you're a parent who's drifted apart from your child, stop buying your way back. Just show up. That's all they ever wanted. The room went quiet. Then applause, not for me, but for the story we'd both lived through. A year later, on a quiet morning, I returned to the studio. The wall of handprints had grown, dozens of colorful palms reaching skyward. At the center was one handprint, larger than the rest, in deep blue. Mine, faded but still visible. Lily came up beside me. You know, Dad, I never thanked you properly for coming back. I smiled. You don't have to. You saved me too. She leaned her head on my shoulder. Do you still regret canceling the funding? I thought about it for a long moment. Then I said softly, no, because if I hadn't, I might have never learned the difference between giving money and giving love. She smiled. Guess we both got the best gift after all. And as sunlight poured through the windows, illuminating the wall of colors, I realized that death had, in a way, given birth, not to endings, but to beginnings. Because sometimes, love isn't reborn in grand gestures. It's reborn in quiet forgiveness. One brushstroke, one heartbeat, one second chance at a time.